to be on every single social media? Maybe not. Or do you have the time to be on every single social media channel? And if that's not the case, it's a good idea to really just delve deep there and be honest with yourself about what you want to achieve and what's feasible, what you can achieve realistically without getting outside help. And if you do need outside help, then you can revisit that again at a later stage. So your bios and your about section, revisiting your brand bio or your about section on your website and on your socials, your URLs, your audience, your target demographic, who is your service for, what is your brand providing, who is your audience, who are you engaging with, what are you solving, what kind of problems are you solving for people, and how can you help them, especially at this time. A SWOT analysis, we don't really touch on the SWOT analysis too much today, but that's just an exercise you can do yourself if you haven't already done one, where you just list out the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats facing your business or service or brand. And then I think before you progress into any major strategy, there's definitely some points we can take today, but if you want to really go at this with gusto today, it's a good idea to set yourself some SMART goals. So they're specific goals, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So something I get asked a lot in consultations and in various different capacities, people would say, okay, I have 2,000 followers on Instagram. How do I get 10,000? And people want 10,000 like that. And that rarely happens, that you grow your channel from 2,000 to 10,000 followers in a matter of months. It does happen, certainly, but usually there's an element of virility or something about that, where you have a piece of content that really grows legs and garners a huge and usually international audience. So if that's not something you're directly facing, set yourself goals that are attainable. So if you want to increase your social media following by 20%, that's a good marker to start with. And set yourself some time deadlines as well. I think there's nothing like a deadline to make you stick to something and actually focus in on it. So, you know, you might say, I'm going to start today and I'm going to look at a 12-week focused effort, and then reevaluate in 12 weeks and say, okay, what worked? What didn't work? Did my channels grow? Did I lose followers? Did I gain followers? Are people commenting more? Are people sharing my content? Is my content shareable? And having a look at that and seeing what works and doing more of that. So it's really a trial and error. And then we'll touch on the marketing strategy then later on as well. So your branding checklist. So I would ask everyone to ask yourselves today, and we're going to share these slides so you can have a look at this again. Who are you? Who is your brand, or what is your business, and what makes you unique? What's the vision for your brand or your business or your service? And what are your goals? Who is your audience? Who can you help? How can you help them? And what makes you different? So I was looking at some articles, and I listened to a lot of podcasts, and one in particular that I came across yesterday was, it's a Buffer podcast. They are experts in social media, and they did an episode, it's about 15 minutes long, maybe less, on marketing in challenging times. And it really resonated with me, and I actually made some notes on it as well that I'm just going to pull up here. And a couple of the points I thought were extremely relevant, because we're all facing a similar issue, or a lot of us are facing similar issues across the board. So one of them was a luxury hotel. So they are now selling online. Obviously the hotels are closed, and they were looking to have another deep dive into their social media or their marketing strategy. So they looked at ways that this could be overcome and it could be helped. There was another person here. What was the problem? Some services are not what people need right now, and that is difficult. But there are ways to strategize around that. However, this is a time to connect with your audience. They may not want your products right now, but if you're building trust, can you solve a challenge for them in their lives? And building that sense of community and that sense of trust really works wonders. So if you are a hairdresser, if you're a beauty salon, you can't be in that close contact with people straight away, but can you sell your hair products? Can you offer advice on covering the grays? Or, you know, can you solve ways? Everyone seems to be trimming their hair at home, and I am this close to doing it myself. So if I saw tutorials for people saying, okay, these are some smart styling tips that you can, you know, hide the grays or get away with a bad haircut if you have taken the scissors or the razor to your head. And, you know, that really builds that trust with the brand. If there's a beauty salon or a hairdresser, just as an example, that you follow, you already have that trusted relationship with them. And for them to reach out at this time, even though you can't support them in person, it is really great that you can have that two-way dialogue and your two-way communication. I always think beauty therapists are the closest things to psychotherapists, because you sit in the chair and all of a sudden, blah, 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 you're just telling all your stories. So that's just one example of how you would say, who is my audience? How can I help them? What makes you different? So at this time, this is the kind of action that can set you apart from your competitors. What makes you reliable, trustworthy? How do you prove that? What's the evidence? So I think this is a really good one as well for hotels. And I have a couple of samples actually of branding samples later on in the slides. But if you are a hotel, what makes you reliable, trustworthy? How do you prove that? You can't take bookings. Well, maybe you can take bookings for later in the season provisionally, but obviously you can't take bookings right now. So some things you could do there is you could share some user experiences or some of the great tips and tricks that you have from being in the business. So it could be things like, you know, it could be to do with laundry. It could be to do with having that hotel feel at home, because people are trying to recreate that kind of holiday feeling or getting out of their house. Because I don't know about you guys, but the four walls, some days more than others, are really closing in. You could be offering menu advice. You could be offering tips on keeping, you know, your pots and pans looking new. I know that sounds maybe a little silly, but I think, you know, the weekends come and we're all looking for things to do. So setting up your social media channels, we'll move on. So with those brand ideas in mind, if you're saying to yourself, okay, this is my brand, this is what I'm about, this is what gives me the X factor. So if we can kind of think of those as we approach the rest of the session, I think would be a good thing. So setting up your channels, a couple of stats just to, you know, I find, and it happens to me a lot, and as a digital service, it's a hard one to admit, but I spend so much time on other brands and on other, you know, on my clients, that often my own channels are the last place that I come to. And I think that's across the board in some capacity or other for everyone. You tend to look after yourself last. So now is a time to focus on yourself, even if it's just for an hour a day. If you decide you're going to do 2 hours a week, that's absolutely fine. Work with what works for you. So if you're focusing on your digital efforts at the moment, and you're saying, oh, you know, is it worth it? Is my audience out there? They don't want to hear from me. They can't avail of my services right now. Let's just have a little look at these stats, because I know for me, even with all that knowledge I already have in my head, you know, sometimes it just takes someone telling you what you already know to make you sit up straighter and listen. So there's 45% of the population globally is on social media. Facebook remains the most widely used social media platform. Roughly 2/3 of US adults now report that they are Facebook users. Social media users by generation, not surprising, 90% of millennials are on social media, 77.5% of Gen X are on social media, and 48.2% of baby boomers are on social media. Now, as you can see, it's referenced at the bottom there, eMarketer 2019. So those figures might be slightly different, but they don't tend to go up a massive amount year on year. And I thought, for me, that's very relevant for the baby boomers, because sometimes I get questions from people saying, oh, you know, my demographic is a little bit older, they're more mature. They're not on social media, and you kind of have to do that workaround to convince them that there is still an audience there for them online. So just to keep that top of mind, on average, people are spending about 3 hours a day on social media, and I wouldn't doubt that that's a little bit higher at the moment. On that podcast I was talking about earlier with Buffer, they mentioned that social media figures are at an all-time high, and I don't know about you, but I'm certainly spending a little bit more time scrolling the internet in the evenings at the moment as well. The figures that they gave were a 55% increase in LinkedIn users, a 23% increase in Twitter users, a 50% increase in Pinterest search, which I thought was interesting because often we overlook Pinterest, and a 50% increase in Facebook and Instagram users. So that's really high. How they put it was Christmas level activity, but every day. And I think that for me made it stand out, because when we think of Christmas time, it's advertising. There's loads of people online, everyone's sharing, everyone's using their hashtags and their tagging. And for that to be, you know, for it to be Christmas level every day for the last, how many weeks are we into lockdown? I think that's really remarkable and not something to be taken lightly. There's a couple of stats here that also really resonated with me. 54% of social browsers use social media to research products. That's really important. So 54% of people go to social media to have a look at products or to research the kind of product they want. And that's really interesting if you have an e-commerce site or if you're selling online. And actually, maybe you don't have an e-commerce site is another point. Maybe you don't have that facility, the booking facility on your website at the moment. That's not to say you can't sell directly through your Facebook or Instagram channel, where you can sell via DMs and sort that out on a personal one-to-one basis. It's also a really nice way to build trust and to create that community feel. And the impact of a positive customer experience, 71% of consumers who had a positive experience with the brand on social media are likely to recommend them to friends and family. That's very important. 71% of consumers with a positive experience with the brand on social are more likely to recommend the brand to a friend or a family member. And then finally, influencers. 49% of consumers depend on influencer recommendations on social media. So that one I would like to just take a second to delve deeper into as well. Because if you're putting together a strategy and you're looking at your budgets, maybe you don't have a huge budget at the moment. Maybe you don't have any budget at all. And you might wonder, how do I get in touch with an influencer? Is it worth it? La, la, la. The tack I take across the board is that anyone can be a social media marketer. So anyone today, I believe, can upskill and learn to become a digital marketer and to do the job that I do. I think it's really a question of time and money. Do you have the time to dedicate to it? Do you have the want to master that subject? If that's not the case, then it's a good idea to look at some outside help in some capacity. But really, the skills that we're learning here today and that you can with numerous courses and maybe some other webinars that we might look at down the line, it's a really good opportunity for you to learn the skills to grow your brand or your business to take you to the next level without using a huge budget or sometimes any budget at all. It can be really frustrating, and I know especially in Dingle, looking at it as a tourist town, and I know not everyone today is from Dingle, but having moved here, excuse me, my mouth is a bit dry. Having moved here, I noticed when I came initially, and I've been visiting on and off for a couple of years before making the decision to come down. And a lot of the time it's the same businesses again and again that everyone is going to, or it's the same pubs, it's the same restaurants. And if you're off the beaten track, it can feel really frustrating that you know that your service is just as good and just as delicious, just as nice and cozy. And you may not get that attention online, because a lot of influencers visit for other voices and the various different festivals. But what I would say is not to lose heart and to look at that as a challenge and an opportunity. So you can engage with those followers when they come down. You might offer them, you know, a discounted meal in exchange for it, but I wouldn't get into the specifics of fees and that kind of thing unless you have a big budget to play with, because it can get really expensive. And I mean, that's a little bit maybe down the line, but I just thought, as we were looking at influencers there and their relevance, because they are incredibly important and very useful for specific campaigns. But I just did want to mention that, to look at the basics first, get the foundations right, and then look at growing and advertising after that. So some of the popular channels include Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and YouTube. So when I was putting these slides together, I wasn't sure if everyone would have a Facebook page or if everyone would have their social media channels created already. And even if you have a couple, I know Magdalena there mentioned earlier that Facebook and Instagram were the two channels that she used, and she doesn't necessarily use Twitter or YouTube or LinkedIn maybe. I know for myself, when I was starting my own social media channels not that long ago, my intention initially was just to sign up with Instagram and with Twitter. And I thought Facebook wasn't really relevant. It wasn't the demographic I was going for. I didn't feel like the user levels were that high, and I didn't really think it was going to be worth the time and effort, knowing myself well enough to know that I'm the best at preaching, but often when it comes to practicing the consistency, I fall off the wagon myself frequently. So I decided Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, I can manage that. I can, do 3 posts a week or whatever it's to be. If I add a Facebook and a LinkedIn and a Twitter and a Pinterest, or, a Pinterest and a YouTube to that, I'm not going to do it. And they're going to sit there as holding sites, and it's not going to look good. But if you've mastered Instagram and Facebook and you think, okay, I know these, I have a good follower base there, I'd like to start writing articles, I'd like to get into blog posts, I don't have a website, or it's not relevant for my website, maybe at that point you look at LinkedIn, and that could be an avenue for you to post your articles online and connect with like-minded individuals or other businesses, and open that two-way network, I suppose, especially now that we've moved onto the virtual and a more remote way of working and living. It can be nice to have that professional connection. LinkedIn might be something to consider. If you do a lot of IGTV videos or long form videos that's longer than a minute, it moves on to IGTV. If you are doing longer pieces of video, maybe YouTube is an option for you. And if you have a lot of followers on your Instagram or Facebook, and you do a lot of live Q&As, for example, or you have started doing menu tutorials or cooking tutorials and you'd like to take it up to the next level, YouTube could be an option there where you can monetize your work. So it's very incremental payments, but it's better than nothing. If you have got a following and if you're finding your video is getting a lot of traction online, maybe that's something to consider. So just thought I'd mention that briefly. So creating the page, when you create your page initially, and I'm sure lots of you or all of you have done this already, on Facebook, it asks you to pick a brand, a business or a brand page, or your community or public profile. And then it asks you to fill in your category and you pick your username and all that good stuff. Then you come to your page itself, you add your logo, your cover photo, your bio, your about section. They're two separate ones actually, the bio and the about, and your relevant information, then contact details, opening hours, if that's relevant to you. And funny enough, we say this because, as I said, I had not intended on using Facebook, but the last few weeks and working with other clients, I've noticed that the Facebook traction is astronomical. It's tremendous, the amount of views and engagement that can be seen and that can be gotten on Facebook at the moment, especially for live video, for demos. I mean, video in general is just, everyone is flocking to video, whether it's on YouTube or Netflix or Facebook or whatever have you. But if you do intend on doing any kind of live tutorials, if you're doing a cooking piece in the kitchen, if you have something that you want to show, or if you feel like you have something important to say and you'd like to come on and say it, the live facility on Facebook at the moment is getting massive traction. So I would recommend, if you have it in you, and if you're brave enough and cohesive enough that you can undertake it, it's definitely worthwhile. It really does have great results. So that's why I came to Facebook. I thought, I don't want to miss out on this great opportunity, because it's like the early days where there's a lot of traction to be had. Whereas 6 months ago, And a year ago, I just thought Facebook is on the way out, and they're taking lots of steps to bring people back in. And live video is now that. For Mark Zuckerberg, he wins again. So just looking at the Facebook page there, the username, my user handle is KCDigital.ie, same as the email address. So that's how I've decided to kind of brand it. I don't know if it's as much a case anymore, but you know, sometimes if you have an established page on one network and you want to set up a second channel, sometimes your user handle is gone and you end up looking at different ways of making your username. So it happens on Twitter quite a bit. You do see it on Instagram as well. My recommendation would be, I'm just checking my time to make sure I'm not rambling, but my recommendation would be to keep it as close to the brand name as you can. Full stop is okay. The underscore is okay. If you have too many, it can look a bit messy. A load of random numbers at the end of your username isn't ideal, but sometimes it can't be helped. So I suppose it's a case of looking at what works for you and seeing if it's searchable as well. And if you are in a position where you have to use a username or a handle on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook that's a little bit obscure, your about section or your bio is a really good opportunity then to have the correct keywords, so that if someone searches you without knowing the name of your handle, that you pop up in the first few. So that is that. The story can be a little bit longer. For your bio section, it's usually, I would say the length of a tweet is a good kind of point of reference there. So 140 characters, it's now longer, 280. A sentence or two, but to keep it kind of 280 characters or a little bit less. Not that I'm expecting you all, by the way, to count every character, but as point of reference, I think it's a good one. And I've just used these two examples of Facebook URLs. While I was putting these slides together yesterday, I was on a country music buzz. So that's why you're seeing John McNichol and a Crystal Gale. So as two examples, John McNichol is quite well established in Ireland, and he has a like page. When it was set up, they obviously set it up as a fan page. And as you can see here, John McNichol, you have all these little, I don't know what the English for those are. Is it a fleshskein in Irish? Those kind of basics I learned in Irish at school, and I just can never remember the English, so excuse me. But John McNichol fan page, and then all the digits at the end. If John McNichol was, going to be touring abroad and he's talking to a promoter, or if he's linking on a website or anything like that, an article in a print media or digital media, it's really great to have a short and concise user handle. And for example, Crystal Gale, hers is the Crystal Gale. It's the Crystal Gale nearly across the board. Actually, I just saw a little chat come in there and I just wanted to have a look. I think actually as I'm presenting, oh yeah, I can pull it down. Just have a quick look. Hyphen, thank you very much. Yeah, a hyphen. So that's that. So Crystal Gale, John McNichol. And if you do find that your user or your URL rather for Facebook is longer and has all the digits, you can go back and you can change it here on the about section with the username. So you just click edit and you change that there. So Instagram, if you have an Instagram page, to allow yourself to, and I use my own channels again, I guess for privacy reasons as well as anything else, but if you have an Instagram page, it's a good idea to register it as a creator page or a business page so that you get to look at your insights and you get to see how many profile visits you're getting every week, who your target demo is, what their user habits are, what is the best day to post. And you can also track then whether you're gaining followers or losing followers. So if on a day I noticed, I had lost 5 followers as an example, I could look at that then and look back on my content and see if I could correlate the two. So was something controversial said, or was something shared that wasn't especially relevant to the audience, that they decided, no more of this, I'm going to hit mute or I'm going to unfollow. So to do that, you go into your Instagram page on mobile. You look at these three top bars here up at the corner. That brings you to settings. You scroll down to account. When you click into account, then it gives you a whole selection where you can link accounts. So if you do decide you want to have a Facebook page, or whether you already have the two and you want to link them together to enable you to cross-share or cross-post more easily, you can do that here as well. But when you scroll down to the very bottom, it says, for me, I have it registered as a business page. So for me, it says switch to personal account or switch to creator account. So if you have, you know, a tourism page and you're not selling anything in particular, a creator account might be a good way to go. But if you have a business page and you're looking at opening hours and you know, even promotions or anything that would establish you as more than a brand, but as a service or business, I would go for the business page. And branding. So maybe actually I might just take pause here to check in and just to see, have I lost anyone? Does anyone have any questions? Or have I touched on anything too quickly that you'd like to revisit or anything like that?
No. Very clear, thank you.
Yeah.
Very clear.
Great. Okay.
Kate, could I just ask about making the videos? You were saying making the videos for YouTube, and that's quite an interesting idea. But would you need to have a fairly good quality camera and setup to look, you know, professional?
It's a catch-22, and it's something I struggle with myself, because naturally when you're taking on anything new, you want it to look perfect, or you want it to look professional or as good as possible. And I think when you're starting something new, more often than not, you need to just be okay with knowing you're going to look back at this when you've gotten the hang of it, and just kind of roll your eyes and say, God almighty, that was terrible. How did I think that was good? But the point I'm getting is you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And even if you don't have the very best camera, oftentimes your mobile phone camera is good enough. I would just make sure the lens is clear so it's not blurry. And I can actually, I'm going to stop sharing here for a second so I can show you some of the setups, because I actually did bring some equipment in case this came up today. So that's just a very small kind of a setup that I use here. And it just means that if you are going to do a piece of camera or a piece of recording, that it's locked down and you're not left doing that kind of shaky feel. If you wanted to do a Q&A or anything, I got that one at you know, those kind of stalls that you can buy mobile phone covers, you know, the likes of these. They're not especially branded. That was only, I think, a tenner. Now the piece I have on top is from a more expensive piece of kit, but I know you can get them. And I'm not an advocate really of promoting Amazon, but they really do have a huge variety of this kind of equipment for quite a reasonable price. Camera shops would also have them. And if you have a camera shop that you would like to support, now would be a nice time to DM them and see if they have anything else they'd like to promote. I have a couple of other examples that I can show you here as well. This is one that I got on Amazon recently, and I find it really beneficial. You lock it onto the side of your table, and it allows you to have the phone on a portrait mode or a landscape, so you can just twist that very easily. And then if you were doing beauty stuff, and I'm not, you have the ring light there. But also if it was a case that you were doing a cooking demo and your kitchen just becomes very dark all of a sudden, that can be really useful. It does come with a cable, so you're kind of restricted in terms of how far you can go with it. But again, that was quite inexpensive. I would say maybe 20, 30 euro. I also have another one that's just a basic tripod. Again, reasonably inexpensive. I didn't invest in a massive amount of kit for this, because really for me, if I want to do something very slick, I'll usually hire a photographer or a videographer who have the best of everything. But for me, if it's just something ad hoc, if I was doing something local at the back of a venue, I don't have a budget to hire someone, this works perfectly. It has the 3 levels. And I'm, you know, not in sorry, just to give you an idea of the length there, and it just locks off with these little clips there as well. And it just means that you do, even if you don't have the very best of equipment, even if you're still learning, at least your video isn't going to be shaking. And I think that goes a long way. And anything else I had there? Not really. I do have a mic. If you were going to do some, I think that was a little bit more expensive, €50. I got it from a company in Dublin. I can see if I have the link to that if anyone wants it. Again, that just plugs directly into your mobile phone. And I have an Osmo, so that's probably my fancier piece of kit. I didn't bother bringing down any kind of camera pieces because I'm not a professional videographer or camera person by any means, but I can keep the shot in focus, and usually that's enough. So that's the Osmo. It's a little mobile device. There's a little click in here that you can attach to your mobile phone. Oh, and sorry, I don't know if I'm going into the woods on this, but I just feel when I was looking for equipment, if someone told me, I would have been grateful. So that's kind of serving myself with that. So that's a little 4K camera then, a 4K lens. And these are a little bit more expensive. I think they're somewhere between 400 and maybe 700 or thereabouts, depending on the model you get. I got this about a year ago or so, and it has a fisheye lens. It's one of the DJI ones similar to the GoPros. And you can get different models that don't have the camera attached. It's just a gimbal, but it means that if you're doing a walking piece, that it's steady. Or if you are running or moving, that you have a steady camera. And it attaches as well to, I might as well go the whole hog now that I've started my demonstration, but it attaches to your mobile phone as well. So you can use it. It attaches like that. Sorry. Might need to take it out of the case. But, oh, sugar. Here we go. Now, that's a bit better. It attaches into the phone so that you can then, actually I'll just open the app. There's a specific app for it. I'm just noticing the time now as well. I'm not keeping great time, but I can't see the app there now.
Katie, sorry, the quick question.
I
hope you can hear me. Yeah. It's not like at the beginning when you really want to just start do those small videos, or I don't know, Instagram or Facebook. It's not, there is this kind of thing that you just need, or the extra person, or just small kind of plan what you want to say. Yeah. And when you're more, when you make some mistakes, or I don't know, your camera a little bit shaky, or you want to show this something very emotional, sometimes it's more catchy for young people because it's look more real than yes. something which is with the kind of, screen script or something.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a good point as well. And it's a question of brand tone. So I would say, if I was a shop and I wanted to demo some of my clothing pieces, maybe I would set up a camera and I would do the try on, try off and talk about the product. Yeah. If I was a blogger, or if I had a kind of a blog, personal brand experience, I would use a mixture of the two. Mm-hmm. If I was going to do a Q&A, I would lock it off so you can use your hands and you can be expressive. If you are just doing Facebook stories or Instagram stories on the fly, or you're at a live event and you want to create that sense of excitement, absolutely handheld. Yeah, I think so. So, and then the advantages of a creator account over a business account. The advantages, to be honest, there's not much of a difference. I think it's to do with the categories. With the creator account, you can register as like just for fun, or a blogger or a brand. And then with the business account, I think the categories, it gives you like media, marketing agency, consultancy, etc. But both of them, you can see the stats. The advertising is the same on both. For the personal page, you don't get the statistics or the insights. That's the main difference. Okay, so I'll fly back to these slides so we can keep things going. Let's have a look here now again. Great. Whoops. Branding. Okay, so now that we've defined the brand and the channels, it's time to look at your creative content. And this is really just a note to say, after this, maybe go back and look at your channels and say, is my profile picture clear? Do I have a personal picture or a logo? If I'm using the logo, is it formatted correctly? As in, now that it's the rounded figure, I know on Facebook initially it was square. So if the crop is still in square, you know, maybe just to look at that cropping so that it fits into the circle, that the whole logo is fitting in there correctly. That falls under your formatting as well. For your cover photo, if you have a Facebook page, just to make sure that you can read the text the whole way across. And this is a bit of a minefield, and I can share a template with you with it because it happens to me all the time if I'm using something with text. And actually I noticed this morning on my own KCDigital Facebook page, the formatting on mobile is not correct, even though I thought it fell within the safe space per se when I was setting it up. And then your messaging, so that's your brand tone again. And like you said, sometimes it's a more personal message. You know, you don't always have to have this really professional, slick look and feel. There is a value in something that's a little more rough and ready as well. Your bio and your about section, I've mentioned that, to keep it short and sweet and to the point. And your audience, so we touched on that earlier as well. Who is your target demographic? What do they want to reach with your brand, or what do you want to reach with them? What's your message? Where do they spend their time online? So, sorry, I see a typo there, spent. If your target demographic is 25 to 35, maybe Instagram is a good place for you rather than Facebook, unless you're doing video content that has that kind of interactive or two-way feel. If your target demographic is largely, I would say maybe 40, 45 plus, you'll possibly reach a broader audience on Facebook, but Instagram's not to be dismissed either, because there are, you know, it really is becoming a whole place. If you're targeting teenagers and early 20s, maybe consider a TikTok account. So, you know, just to have a think about that and what's best suited to you. TikTok integrates really well with Instagram. So if you are targeting a younger demographic, that might be a good pairing rather than the Facebook, Instagram. Which tone is best suited to them? Again, that's kind of self-explanatory. Which channel will focus best on their needs? How can you help them, and what do they want to see more of? So when it comes to the what do they want to see more of, have a look at the posts that you've posted already over the last number of months and just check which has the highest amount of likes, which has the highest amount of comments, which has the highest amount of shares. That counts as an engagement where someone takes the trouble to click on your piece of content, and do more of that. So if you're sharing beautiful landscapes but they're not getting any traction, pull back on them. If you really love to share them, absolutely, it's your account and you can fulfill that need. But if people are really loving a demo, maybe look and see if you can do 2 demos a week and 1 landscape rather than 3 landscapes, or 1 demo and 2 landscapes, etc. So a couple of brands that sometimes I think a visual is nice to be able to, you know, to just evaluate what looks good and what you aspire to. So Strong Roots, and I'm pretty sure these guys use an external agency for their digital media. They certainly do for paid campaigns, and I would presume that they do just looking at the page for the general look and feel. But this is their Instagram page. Their username is strong, it's clear, it's concise. Their logo is formatted really well. They have an authenticated account, so they have the blue tick. It's really tricky to get the blue tick, and I don't have an answer to that one at the moment, how to get it. I've applied for a number of accounts that are still pending. It seems to be luck of the draw. If anyone has a contact in Instagram, please let me know. And likewise, if I do find a contact to get the blue tick quicker, I will be happy to share that information. Their bio is really clear, concise. It tells them what it is: tasty plant-based food designed for busy lives. available in and the stores. And then it has a link to their website where you can go to find out more. Their highlights, so this is these little folders here at the top. They are clear. You can see, you have a good idea of what they are without having to read the bio. And it looks quite slick, I think, to have that cover on them. Very easy to create. Excuse me. And then their profile pictures itself. They're quite cohesive. It's not all brand, but it is all relevant. It's all vegetables. It's all colorful. You can see even they're using this kind of the orange and the green tones across the board. And their whole page is like that. The images are bright. They're clear. Instagram loves pictures with a white undertone. They just love it. So I thought that was a really good example of a strong branded page. And then this one, Hotel Westport. I chose Hotel Westport because I received an email off them lately. I've stayed with them before. I do like them. I think they're a great hotel. And they sent an email to say that while they are not open at the moment, they are looking forward to taking visitors again. And they had an article written about Westport from a couple of years ago that mentioned Hotel Westport in it, and they relinked it at the bottom of the email, which I thought was a really clever way to touch base with their customer base or their email subscribers, our database, in a way that wasn't buy now. You know, it was just, we're here, we're thriving, we're, you know, keeping going, and we're looking forward to welcoming you back again. So that, especially for anyone in the services or hospitality, that's a nice message to have. Where I think they could improve on their social media, I think the logo's really clear. I think their URL is great, Hotel Westport. They've nailed it. Can anyone tell me what they don't think works about their bio?
It doesn't give a lot of information, I suppose.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And it says
Where
hotel.
Westport is, and yeah.
We have hotel 5 times there, between the logo, the username, the name, which is going to come up at the top of the page anyway, but then it's Hotel Westport. So if that was me, I would maybe say beautiful coastal or beautiful 4-star hotel located on the stunning coast of Westport, or something enticing about the area, something that's a selling point for them. Katie, can you explain a little bit about why the authenticated tick is so important? I will, and I'll come back to that now in a sec. They've noted that it's 4 stars in the bio. They have the pin of where they're located, but I mean, really, Hotel Westport, do they need the pin? It's self-explanatory. So maybe they could have, and they have a call to action, which I think is good. Share your moments, and their Hotel Westport is their hashtag. But that could be improved upon. They could give a little bit more information about the hotel itself. I think their highlights are really good. Some of them may benefit from a cover. So the weddings is quite clear. Deals, maybe they could have something there that's a little bit enticing, where you have a percent, you know, if it's 20% or something, they could have that on the highlight cover. Family fun, that could have a nice little kind of family fun feel, whereas I can't really make out what that is. It kind of looks like a woods. So they're making a really good effort, and I think there's, you know, we can improve upon it. They're kind of working with a purple theme on the timeline, which I think is really nice, and they've been sharing recipes. Again, I think it's a really positive thing. But maybe after this, it's a nice one to reference. So you're saying, okay, these guys now clearly they have a little bit outside help, and it's very slick. I'm not saying everyone should have an account that's that slick, but on the same token, if your page is looking a bit more like this, have a look at different pages that you like, that you aspire to being more like, and see how can you be inspired by them to have a closer look and feel, or can you take some value from different accounts. The importance of the blue tick is really, it just gives that seal of officialness. So if you're a musician, if you're an artist, if you're releasing content, the blue tick can really be very, very useful when you're talking to promoters or when you're linking in with the venues. If you do a lot of media pieces, if you do a lot of radio interviews or public speaking, that blue tick adds weight to your brand or your profile, really is the key. Your website is your shop front. I'll just have a quick check on my time. Your website's your shop front. You maintain the front of your premises. Why not your site? Your digital profile is more important now than ever. While we have this unexpected downtime, look at your current business model and think about how you will adapt for the new market. And I think that message is equally true for the social media channels, not just the website. So your social media checklist: pick your channels, complete your profiles, claim your business page, choose your images, your brand creatives, fill in your bio and your about sections. We've covered all of that off. Follow fellow businesses, brands and prospects. I think that's important for that community feel, solidarity. We're all in this together. And also, if you're a tourism page, it benefits you to follow. You know, well, I'm from Galway myself, so probably the Galway examples are more top of mind. You know, the Visit Galway, Wild Atlantic Way, the Cracking Galway, Galway Now, Galway BFM, all of those local enterprises that may look at your site and say, oh, that's an amazing profile, I'm going to give them a share. And you can shout out for each other. Keep a close eye on your mentions. That's a really good one. And while we're busy and focused on other stuff, it's often, you know, it's very easy to miss mentions and that kind of thing. But if someone's been to your cafe or to your business, used your service and they really liked it, and they've taken the time to mention, you know, maybe it's, you know, just had coffee at Katie's Cafe Dingle, best coffee in town. That's a really nice piece of brand advocacy. That's very shareable. So that's a really good one to mention. And, you know, you can reply and say, you know, thanks, Alva, glad you enjoyed Katie's Cafe type thing. You could take that nice mention as well and repurpose it into a graphic and share that on your site. So it's user generated content. Or again, if someone had been to Dingletown and wrote a blog about it, or was inspired to share a piece of information of their experience of Dingle, that's a really nice way that you can share them, and make sure you tag them if you use a photo or anything, that you credit the person whose work it is, and give them a shout out for taking the time to do that. Keep a close eye on your mentions, that's fine. Define your social strategy, assemble your content calendar, engage with other users following an 80-20 rule. So we're going to look at them now, and I am a bit conscious of the time, so I'll just fly through some of these. Just have a little chat here, I'll have a quick look. If your resources are limited, would you recommend channeling them into social media rather than a website? It's a difficult one. It's a tricky one to say. I would say it depends on the intention. If it's for brand awareness, yes, if the information can be gotten from the socials rather than the site. If you're selling something, it might be more beneficial to use your website and then have your socials as a link back to increase conversions or to get people to actually use the buy facility. Might have a think about that one as well, and maybe come back to it a bit at the end. Okay, so define your strategy. Social media strategy. At this point, we've revisited our brand, we know our audience and have defined that demographic. We know what our value is, what we want to say to our customers. Now it's time to action those points in a way that is effective, but also that works for you and your needs. So if you've an established brand, now is a good time to do an audit and to take some notes on what your progress is like at the moment. How many followers do you have? Roughly, what's the average on likes and engagement? So are a lot of people commenting? And if you're going to redouble your efforts or refocus on your socials for now, revisit in 12 weeks time and just have a look and see, have your followers grown? And if they have grown, what's the percentage there? Because that gives you a good idea of how you can maintain that over the year. How often should I post? I get this question a lot and there's no right answer. I think the answer is, how often can you post? What's feasible for you? If you can post 7 days a week, amazing. If you're posting 7 days, yes, you may see more traction than someone who's posting once a fortnight, But if you can only post once a fortnight, then that's the right thing to do for now. Post once a fortnight. I would say, and what I try to do is say if I was a service, if your thing is on a Monday morning, I do the roster and I put in an order, maybe that's the time that you've put that morning aside for admin. Maybe that's the time you say, okay, I am now going to spend 2 hours on social media and I'm going to square off 3 posts for the week ahead. And you have your photo and your piece of content and you have it ready to go. You can schedule it, or you can just have it ready to post and copy and paste it in then when the time is right. I say quality over quantity. Quantity and consistency leads to better results. So there are some nice tips and tricks you could do as well. And this does happen often. You might just say, oh God, I have nothing to say. So maybe you have an established day where you do something specific. Oftentimes, if you were looking to grow your followers, you might do a Follow Friday. That's where you give a shout out to other businesses or pages that you admire or like. You could also do a Sunday session if you were a music channel. I like the alliteration. It's good for hashtagging. Monday Motivation is one that tags or that trends often on Twitter. That could be one where every Monday you share an inspirational quote. Instagram loves inspirational quotes, or something like that. And that just means that every week it's kind of brainless work. You know what you're going to do. You don't have to think about it too hard. And that gives you a bit of free time then to focus on your other post or posts, depending on how often you're going to post. The 80-20 rule is not a hard and fast rule, and it may not work for all brands, but generally speaking, and this kind of goes back to marketing, traditional marketing more than digital, but it's 80% of your post should inform, educate and entertain, and then 20% is a hard call to action. So it's 20% buy now, click here, but 80% is kind of a soft communication of I'm here to help you, what can I do to make your life easier, look at this funny meme type thing, depending on your tone and your brand. Find your brand voice, the tone used on your channels. If it's formal, informal, humorous, for example, the Garda Instagram page is quite humorous, which goes against what you would think for the Gardaí, because obviously they're very formal. Promote your channels, so cross-promote. If you have an active Facebook page, encourage people to check out your Twitter or your Instagram if you're trying to grow those channels. Again, if you have a website, link back to your social media channels for the most up-to-date information, if that's where you're going to post most frequently. And likewise, if you have a really active blog page or a really active news section on your website, share that through your social media pages to get more people to visit your website and have that as the place that people go to get the information that you're providing or they're looking for. And monitor your social media presence. So I mentioned that, just to have a quick look at your stats today and then revisit it in a month or 3 months time, and just to gauge, is it growing? And that'll give you a good indication of what's working and not working. So I have a couple of documents that I want to share with you. These are just template worksheets that you can look to use from today. If this is how you want to do it, this works for me. It may not work for everyone. So as I use them for myself, I thought it might be good if you fancy taking them yourself. I'm doing a free consultation call for anyone at the moment. So if you have some questions, please do feel free to follow up afterwards. But I'm also doing kind of a social media blast where I will help manage your page for a month. And I've cut that nearly in half just because everything is difficult enough at the moment. But anyway, I don't want to do too much of a hard sell on that. I think the point today is really to educate. So I'm going to click briefly and I will let you go then, unless we have any questions. I just want to share very quickly a link to these. So this is just a quick one on where you'll find the templates. We'll share these through the hub. So Maggie or Deirdre will share them after this. And just to give you a quick look at the template that's workable. So I find this really handy for outlining the business objectives, your social media goals, and I do that quarterly. And then as a month to month this is my holy grail, where I put down anything that's happening that month, any special days, and then at least at a point of reference, if I'm sitting down once a week and saying, okay, I mean, ideal situation, but I do it religiously for my clients. Unfortunately, I don't do it as religiously for myself, but I'm working on it today, and that's my promise to you guys today as well. Is any kind of social media days or somewhere where I think I can have a little creative look here and see if I can tag on to any kind of social media moments that will give me good engagement. I add them there. And again, if there's anything coming up that I don't want to forget, I just add them there as well. So for example, a follow Friday, I might put follow Friday at Dingle Hub, follow Friday at whoever. And I'm not going to start listing businesses because that's what's going to get me into trouble for sure. But I've just put in a couple of the days for the next 2 months if anyone wants to use this. Wednesday is International Day of Dance. So if you're a musician, it's a good opportunity to do a tic-tac challenge, get some user engagement there. If you have a dance studio, or if you know anyone who's a dancer, maybe let them know. Jazz Day, again, music focused. Definitely one for the Dingle Peninsula. Star Wars Day, May the 4th be with you, is usually the hashtag. So maybe have a think about that. Do you have a story relative to Star Wars that you could share? Next Monday, is it? And then there's International Mother's Day and this kind of stuff. This is an American template, so you'll see the Armed Forces Day, Memorial Day. But if you have an international audience, again, it's a good opportunity to tag in with them. And Hamburger Day, that's for anyone who's doing food. So that's kind of it. I have run a little bit over, so I know an hour is a long time and I've given a huge amount of information, so I'm sorry if I've confused anyone. Does anyone have any questions that you'd like maybe to have a quick look at? Yes, and actually I didn't get into that in this particular one because I wasn't sure if it was gonna. I do talk about it in the I was going to say lecture, the webinar this afternoon. Yes and no. If you're using primarily Facebook and Instagram, they've launched a creator studio that allows you to schedule really easily. And Mark Zuckerberg, you know, I'm not the biggest fan, but they're just a bit devils. If you're using a Hootsuite or a Sprout Social or HubSpot to schedule, and I do use them actually because they're just so handy and it does cut down on the time, especially if you're time poor. But you do tend to get a lower engagement when you use them because Facebook essentially punishes you for not scheduling directly through their site. And I presume with Creator Studio, it's going to be the same. At the moment, I'm using Creator Studio for Instagram scheduling and Facebook scheduling. They haven't nailed it with Instagram. It does stop working at the worst time all the time. And Hootsuite does that as well for Instagram in particular. Twitter is really great. Hootsuite is great for Twitter. And if you're an avid Twitter user, absolutely. I think the personal account is €13.50 or €15 a month or something like that. It's something similar on Buffer. And Buffer are, if you are interested in learning a little bit more, Buffer, BUFFER, are fantastic for information. They have a really good podcast, short and sweet, 15-minute nuggets. If you're managing a number of pages, they are more expensive for sure. But yeah, if you're time poor, it's worth having a look at. If you're primarily focused on Facebook and Instagram, I would say try to migrate over to Creator Studio, and that lives in the business page on Facebook. So yeah, and if you have any questions afterwards, don't hesitate to follow up with me. I would prefer to, you know, that you take this information and run with it. So don't hesitate to send me an email. I hope to speak to you soon.